Welcome to Leaving Crazy Town with Finn and Sarah. What are we going to
What's
talk about today, Sarah?
what's going on, buddy? We're doing a little episode early in the morning, and I know I literally look like it's early in the morning, but we are going to talk to God, I love you. All right, people, we are going to talk today about honesty, which I know now I was waiting for Finn to put his finger in his throat, but we're going to
I
talk
almost
about
did. I almost did that.
because what we're discovering is when we have something we need to communicate to someone, or when we're denying something that we need to communicate to someone, it comes out in different ways. And this is what we're talking about. I want you to notice if you have friendships or relationships, intimate relationships, family relationships, are there behaviors you start doing, either behaviors or ways of thinking that you start doing to deny what you're feeling or to not or to get in the way of having an uncomfortable conversation? Am I making any sense, Finn? Can you clarify what I
No,
just?
no, you're not making
Okay.
any sense. No,
All right.
you are, but you jumped right into like, think about this. I think we do best when we give an example.
All right. Go ahead.
We're talking about, say you have a relationship with someone, any kind of relationship, and they're doing something that you don't really like and you want to
Yes.
clear it up, but
Yes.
you don't even realize it. Because we talked in the past in our podcast about how we just like pretend things aren't happening or we make them okay, and it's not necessarily, I'm not talking about red flags per se, but we just might, somebody may be doing something that we're not happy about and we're in a relationship with them and we don't want to tell them, but we don't
Yes.
realize it. So we start making up stuff like we're too busy to be
Yes.
around them because they're going to do that thing we don't want them to do, or we start to distance ourselves because we're thinking like it's a lot easier, right, to end your relationship than it is to speak your truth.
My God,
Interesting.
it's such a great topic. And I'm going to give an example also because, okay, we haven't done an episode for a while, but I've been in a relationship for a few months. Okay.
Dun dun dun.
Big news to the channel. And
And
this
let me
is
just say, Sarah's been getting us a lot of good content.
so much content now.
I get
I'm
to
really,
remind her she wrote a book on that every other
oh
day.
my gosh. Like literally, when I say to people, and I've said this for years to clients, and I say it on the channel, the first 3 months of a relationship is an opportunity for every unresolved issue to come and slam you in the face. Okay. So, but what I want to say is there's an example I have, which is I'm in this relationship. And what I noticed over the last month was I started to have these thoughts about, oh, geez, maybe this isn't it, or maybe he's doing this, or the focus was basically on him and being picky in my head about certain things. And over time, what occurred to me in speaking with actually a friend of mine and Finn is that I was denying being hurt like a month ago. And this sounds crazy, right? I had this incident on July 4th where I got my feelings hurt, didn't realize it. Actually, I realized it, but what happens to me often is this is my MO. I'll kind of say, wow, that's my issue. I need to work it out. I need to look at why it's happening. Like I focus way too much on me resolving it, which is important instead of, I do a turnaround and all that stuff. Instead of that, there's just this thing that hurt me that I need to communicate. So I will start, like Finn just said, distancing myself, making up, I will do other things to detach from myself rather than communicate. So I know all of you have had these situations. I think the amazing thing for me was how subtle it was and how easy it was to deny feelings at this stage in the game. But thoughts?
Uh,
Yeah. I mean, I think when we are hurt or we are angry or we are scared and we're in an intimate relationship, or if it's something super uncomfortable to talk about, our systems will make up stories, will have other strategies to deal with it rather than directly talking to the person. So I'm
yeah, and
just,
I think a lot of times people aren't even aware. Like
I wasn't aware.
sometimes I don't know there's something going on, and then I sit for a minute and I'm like, what is going on? And then all of a
Yes,
sudden it's like, oh, I need to say something about something. And
that's what's, yes,
prior to really doing this work, I cast relationships aside. And I didn't know why I was doing it, but today I understand that I do it, or I had done it, to avoid actually speaking the truth. Because what happens, right? I've got to go to this person I'm seeing and
yes,
tell them the truth about me, whether it's
yes,
not liking something, or, it doesn't matter how innocuous it might sound, it's sharing my truth, right? So
yes,
now I'm opening up and I'm creating a vulnerability. They could tell me I'm ridiculous. They could shame me. So, you can track that back to
yes,
childhood. Like,
yes,
where did I go and share my feelings with my parents or somebody, and they just kicked you in the teeth and told you you're ridiculous. You don't feel that way. You shouldn't this, you shouldn't that. They
yes,
shame you and then make you take care of their feelings. So I can see why I would automatically start to override the idea that
yes.
something bothered me or that something needs to be cleared up. Instead, it's a lot easier for me to like learn to like it. And
Oh,
let's be honest, you don't learn to like something that annoys the living crap out of you. What happens, or that hurts you or whatever, what happens is you bury it and you pretend. And you may not even like, I didn't even know half the time I was doing it. And then I
yes.
cut somebody out of my life. And to me, if you just pause for a minute and stop looking at them and being like, wait, what's going on for me? You may realize like, oh, I need to speak up about something.
Oh my God. I mean, but you just like, could we have taped that? I mean, we
We
did
are
tape it.
taping
Sorry.
it.
Okay. Um, that was so good. And I love the word override because I think our systems, when we go into some past fear, like you said, some past event where I've been hurt that this event reminded me of, our systems just override. And exactly what you said, which is I started talking to some people about it and got very clear about, wow, I didn't even know my feelings were hurt that day. And then when they were hurt
Right.
that day, then this happened, then this happened. And really, the conclusion is if you want to have intimacy in relationships and connection with people in relationships, they're going to be uncomfortable. And telling
Yeah.
the truth, the benefit is fast forward to getting together with the person I'm with, having a conversation. I literally was so anxious. I had this list, and you just said it. I had to expose myself and I had to be willing to share my truth no matter what would happen. Like, geez, he may say, gee, this isn't working out or whatever. I had to know that I was the priority. My truth was the priority. Like we say on this channel all the time, what do I want? What do I need? And I had to express a few needs, which is scary because what if you express needs and they can't do it? So, bottom line is, I had the conversation, I expressed my truth, and what came out of that, which often does with people that can tolerate it, is more intimacy, more connection,
Right.
more vulnerability, and whoops, freedom. Like, really, the
Yeah. And
feeling I,
ultimately, people end up,
yes,
and I only share this, I only know that I can say this because I've experienced it for myself and I've seen it.
yes,
We end up staying in relationships that don't work because it's better to speak your truth, be honest about what's going on, than find yourself in a relationship where your needs aren't being met in or they're not even attempting to be met because the person has no clue. You have internal rage towards them and you go, I've seen this a lot. Cycles,
yes,
right?
yes,
My husband did this. Why does he always do this? Blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
And then somehow they shift it. In 2 days, they're madly in love. And then in a
Yes.
month, that friend tells me the same story, different scenario. And then
Yes.
they shift it, and then same story, different scenario. And never once are they going to them and saying, this doesn't
Yes.
work for me. This behavior is not working for me. And, I can understand in a marriage, it's a little bit more sticky than it is when you're in a friendship. But I see people stay in friendships that don't work for them, but they don't speak up. They just stay in it. Now, what would happen, right? So, I owed Sarah some money the other day, and she said a while back, like, "Oh, don't worry about it." So I put it out of my mind,
Yep.
and then she calls to tell me, "Oh, I just want to clear it up. I know I said never mind, but you still owe me this money," and I sent it to her within minutes. It cleared it up. Now, she could have kept carrying that around and being like taking it on. Like I said, don't worry about it. Therefore, I don't deserve to be reimbursed, whatever. And I have no clue what's going on. Or she could have just continued to build a resentment that I didn't pay her and then separate from me,
Right.
like move away. And I've seen this with people. And, and if I go and if Sarah says to me, hey, Finn, remember you owe me $200. And I'm like, so what? I don't care. Then she knows she gets to decide. She gets to make a decision based on who I am with the information, who she is with her information about
Yes.
whether or not we continue this journey together. And, the thing is, in other relationships, and that's a very basic thing, it's about money owed, which people have a lot of issues with. They don't speak up. And then they're like, I can
Huge.
never go out to eat with that particular group because that one person and it makes me pay every time.
That's right.
There's a lot of stuff around that. So it is a good issue. But the bottom line is staying in relationships that don't work. Now, what I saw on my fourth step in recovery was I continued relationships with people who had no clue who I was because I
Yes.
was never truthful. And
Yes.
that's where I saw that I was a true liar. I was afraid to share my truth because the fear of abandonment was so
Yes.
great that
Yes.
I stayed in a relationship that really wasn't even a relationship because nobody knew who I was. And then eventually I did what Sarah said and I separated myself and cut them out of my life. So I therefore ended up abandoned.
You know what, though, you're saying so powerful, because really what we're looking at is the consequences. And I'm telling you, there are serious, serious consequences to not being who you are, which is what we talk about here all the time. When we deny our feelings, when we make up stories in our head about people, when we dismiss our own needs, our own realities, our own self expression, our own honesty with others, that can lead to so many problems, including relapsing. So, I mean, how many people do I know that have relapsed because accumulated issues with a partner, with a husband, with a wife, with a friend, or whoever, a boss, goes on and on. They accumulate resentments, they accumulate hurt feelings, they don't speak up, and the next thing you know, they're relapsing, but they don't even know why, right? It's that dismissing, dismissing, dismissing. So when we're talking about being honest in your relationships, we're talking about this is life or death. And I'm not kidding. It's life or death because of substance possibilities, but it's also life or death because if I don't communicate my truth, I'm going to start being individually affected. I could get sick. I could
Mm.
get depressed. I could start having panic attacks. I mean, it manifests. Dishonesty and not speaking up manifests in all kinds of ways. And I
And
truly believe
not to
that.
mention, it isn't fair to the other person.
Oh,
The
let
other
alone
person
us
is
going
not
down
being
that route.
given the opportunity to know what's going on. And now you're acting weird. Actually, just real quick, one example I just thought of. I was walking on the bike trail with a friend of mine and I shared something and they said something back to me. And
Yes.
it's what they want to hear when they
Yes.
share something vulnerable. I hated it. And I was actually able to say, I don't feel heard.
Yes.
And I was only able to say it to her because you and I have been through this thing so
We've
many
had this.
times.
Yeah.
And I recognized the activation before I went a little wackadoo. And I
Yes.
said, when people say that to me, I don't feel heard. And what my friend said to me was, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I love when people say that to me. I really do feel heard." And she said, "Of course, I want to show up for you in our friendship the way you need me to, not the way I think you need me to."
Perfect.
And we ended up having such a fabulous conversation. And then
Perfect.
fast forward, I'm in a group and everybody shares, and usually the typical thing would be like, "Good to hear, thank you, Finn," or "Thank you, Sarah," whatever. And there's a woman in there that says, "You were heard," and I hate it.
Mm,
And she
mm,
says it to every person. And I talked to her, I shared with her, I said, I don't like that. And she said, "Well,
that
it
doesn't
made
work.
me feel really good when I came here." So and she still does it to me. And to me, that is somebody I would not spend time with. They disregard how I feel because
Yes.
they think it's what I need. And if you don't have these conversations, you don't get to discern who can show up for you the way you want
Yes.
them to, and who's
Yes.
willing to make an effort outside themselves to care for you.
Oh, it's so good. And I mean, you're just reminding me, and we are doing a future episode on men and women, but just this whole idea of communication and that what you need or what
Oh,
I want to hear, is something that maybe my partner, it doesn't work for him. I mean, we talk about the solving problems like that. Sometimes I'll share something and my sweetheart will want to solve it or give me the solution. And I'll have to say, I just need you to say, it sounds like you're uncomfortable, or it
yeah, I
sounds like
think
you're
we
hurt, or
did
whatever.
say, and I,
We did
I
say
hate
that.
the future episode thing, but we are going to do an episode on communication
Yes.
because it is really interesting how people show up. But we should probably get an end to this one because we're running way past our normal
Yes.
time. But
All right. So the importance of honesty, speaking up, it all goes back to allowing yourself to honor who you are, be who you are. So our recommendation this week is if there's something you haven't said to somebody, think about what's getting in the way. And are there consequences that you're suffering now because you haven't said it? And maybe take a little risk and say it. Say your truth. You're worth it. Fasten your
amen. All right,
seatbelt.
we're out of here.
We're out of here.